if you study diligently for like a good hour, I think it's just as good as pretending that you're studying for 5 hours, right? So I see people on the treadmill, they're just walking very aloof for like an hour and a half. But the guy next to them might be doing high intensity for 15 minutes, heartbeat, everything. So they're getting more out of it.
I'm your host, Brian McCann, and this is the Road to Wine Expert podcast. You might know Yannick Benjamin from his years of stellar service in the New York restaurant scene, or maybe you know him from the TV series Uncorked. Perhaps you've been to one of his amazing wine events in support of his nonprofit, Wheeling Forward. Simply put, Yannick Benjamin is a master of the art of the hustle. He's an inspiring figure in the wine world, and really the world in general. Every time I talk to him, I feel blessed and motivated. So I'll let Yannick take it over from here to tell you his story, and hopefully you'll leave inspired too.
I really can't say there's one particular experience, but I would say that I grew up in the wine industry and in the restaurant industry. My father came here from France in 1963. And he came here. His very first job was a dishwasher at La Grenouille, and so it was just a natural kind of thing that I would get thrown into the wolves and work in the restaurant business. From a very young age, I always knew that is something that I wanted to do. I never had any inkling as far as wanting to do anything else. That was it. I knew that I wanted to work in restaurants. I knew I wanted to be part of food. I knew I wanted to be part of wine. And I made that firm decision at the age of 13. I just thought it was a very unique industry to be part of. And that was something that I just thrived for. So pretty much when I went to high school and I would see my guidance counselors and they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I just want to work in the hospitality industry. Some of them were really because what they were expecting was either, you work for the government, lawyer, doctor, but no, this is what I decided to do. So even the concept of me wanting to go to college, it didn't make sense because I said, why do I have to go to college when I can learn everything in the restaurant business? And I was already doing that because I had started at a very young age. I started at 14 as a busboy, and I kept doing it. And so there wasn't a pure experience, but it was just something that I grew up with, and it was something that I loved. But I loved the idea of being around family. I loved the hosting. I loved that concept. Community spirit.
Great. That's very unique. I think very few people so far I've interviewed have really grown up in the industry, especially
Right.
from a young age of 13. Is they started a little bit later. They got a
Right.
job in college or
Right.
high school, but to start at
For
a young
sure.
age. Is there anything you sort of, looking back at sort of how it tracked now, I think things have worked out. But do you feel like you missed anything by not, by having a dream so young? I just wonder, did you feel like you missed out on maybe some other opportunities? Or do you have anything that you look back and like, oh, I really wish I would have done this? And it could be even industry specific, not so much as like you want.
For sure. I made a firm decision at a very young age, and I have never regretted it. Of course, the only thing that I say oftentimes that's very difficult, whether it's working as a sommelier, bartender, on the wine sales aspect, importing and distributing. Of course, as you get older, you say, geez, I wish I had some kind of pension or that kind of stuff. And that part is it's very difficult, and I guess what I would say looking back, which I have done as I've gotten older, but creating other skills. So just being a sommelier or just knowing wine is really not enough. I think in order to really survive in this industry, you have to be good at multiple things. I think multiple passions work hand in hand. So if your goal is just to be the world's greatest sommelier, that's good momentarily. It's good for the present. But going into the future, it's going to be very challenging because it doesn't last forever. We work in an industry where restaurants open and close all the time. Importers and distributors open and close all the time, and it's so competitive now. I mean, in one hand, it's a great industry, but it's also quite diluted too. And so that aspect of it, it's something that probably gives me a little bit of anxiety. What happens when you're going, as you get older, insurance, again, not having a pension and that. So it is a hustle. And people have to realize that if you're going to get into this industry, you're going to have to be able to work hard and have different forms of income coming left and right.
Solid advice. So let's dig into that. What things have you done to hustle? So, I know you
Right.
primarily through a TV show. So I know you as Yannick Benjamin, sommelier,
Right.
and a little bit about your nonprofit, Wheeling Forward. So what other things are you up to, or what other crazy ideas have you had in the past to make a little extra cash on the side?
Yeah, I mean, I think the truth is I think depending on where you are, what your market is. I'm very fortunate. I live in New York City, so there's always something to be done. I mean, you can do consulting for an distribution company, have your own side gig, private seminars, private events of that nature. Even doing a sense of PR for certain wineries or branding agencies. So there's always things of that nature that you can do for sure. But obviously you want to have a steady flow of income. So possibly if you're going to work as a buyer or an assistant buyer, whatever that case is, obviously working for an established company, whether it's a hotel or restaurant, would be very helpful. And then on top of that, doing little side things on the side would be very beneficial. And then just looking at that as a bonus and perhaps putting that money that you make in addition to your regular salary into an investment, stocks, whatever, 401k plan, IRAs, things that, heck, we all need and we don't think of. And I can tell you because at the age of 25 years old, I was in a car accident that forever changed everything. And I say this from experience because it was very challenging. It was very difficult. I had luckily I was working for the Ritz-Carlton Hotel at the time, which offered a really good benefit package plan. But then eventually my benefits got exhausted, and then that became a whole disaster. And it's challenging. And I don't think enough people think about that. And I see a lot of young people who go into the industry. It's delusional in many ways because you're drinking some of the most sought after and expensive wines. You're getting to go on these free wine trips. You're eating sometimes these expensive meals because they're being taken out because you're a buyer, but it doesn't last forever. And that's not the reality because then you end up still having to take the 2 train back to the South Bronx, and this small little shack. So I think people forget that notion, and it happens very fast.
A good reality check for sure. I think you do get lost in that dreamy state, and maybe it just has to do with the hours, right? You're up till 4 a.m. and you sleep till noon or later, and you do it all over again. So you're sort of in this weird world.
Absolutely.
That's unlike anyone else. So it does become like an echo chamber, and you're only seeing one side of the thing. So I think that's great advice. So let's go back a little bit and talk about your journey from 13 busboy. You mentioned some other stops along the way, working at the Ritz-Carlton. Sort of what did your trajectory look like in the hospitality industry? Yeah,
for sure. So I started my first job was working. I was doing odd jobs here and there, busboy, some bar back, and then my real first kind of consistent job was at Bryant Park Grill, which is actually behind the New York Public Library on Fifth Avenue. Beautiful place. And I was there for about almost 2 years, and I loved every minute of it. I was just basically, I was a busboy / barback and a porter. I was just pretty much I was a jack of all trades, but I learned so much and I absolutely adored it. I had a really good mentor. I was working for the food and beverage director. Her name was Arlene Wesson. And she was a total hustler and really just all over the place, like 100%, full of energy. And so I knew right then and there, I was like, that kind of confirmed that I wanted to do that. And that I actually focused more working there than I was in high school. And so I pretty much knew that I'm learning so much more doing this. I was learning accounting. I was learning numbers. I was just networking, nothing that I was learning absolutely nothing at this point in high school, at least for me, because I was no longer into it. And then, of course, when it was time to make a decision to go to college, I had to talk to my dad. I said, I just want to go to a trade school, hospitality school. I don't want to waste any time learning about English literature or any of that stuff. And not to be ignorant, but I want to learn what I want to learn, things that I really enjoy. And so my dad said, well, why don't you just go to a regular 4-year college, at least get your associate, see how you like it. Well, that didn't last too long because 6 months later, I got kicked out. I got expelled from college, you know? And so just right then and there, Le Cirque 2000 was opening up. And my dad knew the owner, and then I got hired there, and that's where it all kind of started with fine dining. And that was really the beginning in '97 of the idea of like the sommelier, because, you know, my dad worked at Lutèce, La Grenouille, all these really great French restaurants. This concept of the sommelier really was non-existent. It was usually the maître d'. When I talk about, there was an actual maître d', not the host or hostess, you know, but a maître d' who was a jack of all trades, you know, worked the floor, was a dining room manager, and took care of the wine list, maintained it, and then you might have had an assistant manager. So when I started working there, growing up, what I wanted to was be sort of the maître d', because that was the thing at that time. And there was a young sommelier there, an American guy named Ralph Hersom, who was about 27 years old. He was hired from Windows in the World, which was at the time one of the premier places, unfortunately no longer there. And I said, geez, this guy has such a great gig. You know, he's there. He's sort of like the maître d'. He's still socializing. He's still, you know, talking about food, but he's serving wine, and it was just an amazing. And he kind of took me under his wing, and that's where it all really stemmed from. And I just loved his persona, his energy. It wasn't stuffy. It was very friendly and very generous in knowledge. And at that point, he said, why don't you sign up for a wine class? And I was like, well, I'm only 19 years old. He's like, don't worry about it. And I took my first wine class at the International Wine Center, which is part of the Master of Wine program. And that's where it all began. And then after that, I made a stopover at Oceana, followed by John George. And then after John George, I went to go work at Atlas Restaurant, which at the time was a great restaurant. This was the beginning of molecular cuisine. I was working for an English chef there, Paul Liebrandt, who at the time was the youngest chef to receive 3 stars from the New York Times. And then I spent the last 3 or 4 years at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, and now I'm at the University Club.
Great. Wow. Just like a whirlwind tour we got there.
Yes.
Excellent. So that's been, you know, your trajectory as a sommelier. Let's just shift gears a little bit and talk about, you know, what you do also is your nonprofit Wheeling Forward.
Right. So going back to what I was saying, I'm a paraplegic. I was in a car accident in 2003. So obviously it was a big life changer. It changed my life forever, as you can imagine. And even when I was in the hospital, when I was in rehabilitation, I really, in my head, had no issues. I said, okay, I'm never going to walk again. But I remember getting the floor plan from the restaurant at the Ritz-Carlton, and I was looking at it. I said, okay, maybe we can move table 1 to this way, get rid of table 3, and then I can still work the floor. So even right then and there, I had every intention to go back and work in restaurants. This is what I loved, and I didn't think that my life would have to stop because of me having paralysis, that I could still continue on with my passion. Of course, the reality check came later on when I had to actually, I tried to do it, and it was a bit challenging. It was not easy. And I realized probably a good year after my accident that I was going to have to slow down, take my time, and really learn how to push this wheelchair around and just adjust. And one doctor told me, he said, Yannick, you're going to have to slow down. You're going to have to adapt to what's around you, but also make it adapt to you. And this takes time. It takes a lot of time. So I started building my work stamina. So I was out of work for about almost a year. So what does that mean, my work stamina? Getting my brain functioning again, because it kind of atrophied from just really focusing on rehabilitation, physical therapy. So, getting to work, from work, going back home, that kind of stuff, rebuilding the whole process again. And that took a while. I would say probably about a good 5 years. And then finally, at that point, Alex Ilogudin, who's the co-founder and president of Wheeling Forward, who was also my roommate for about 4 months in the same hospital room because he was in a separate car accident, we always knew that we wanted to do our own thing. And what that thing was trying to help other people who may not have had the same network of friends and family that we did. So while we were in the hospital, we realized that we had people coming visiting us all the time. At any moment, I knew at 2 o'clock in the morning, I could call anyone to get me a tuna sandwich. Some of these individuals never had people come visit them. And that's problematic because you can't do anything alone. You cannot do it on your own. It's very challenging. I don't care if you're able-bodied, you have all the money in the world, you need support. And it's so important. And we take that for granted. And so what we wanted to do was really help a particular population, a specific population that may not have friends, may not have family, and we wanted to act as a second family. So when I started going back to work, I said to Alex, you know, when you're ready, get the papers, let's do this, let's get a 501c3, and I'll start doing these little wine tastings. We just thought that we would do these little, you know, outings, mentorship, and it has just grown into something else. It's now called Wheeling Forward. And our very first fundraiser, which was in 2012, we raised probably 20 grand, to where this year we raised almost 200K in just one event. And we're doing other events throughout the year, and it's all going to a really good cause.
That's really amazing. It's an amazing story. It's really, you have just a truly awesome, in the true sense of the word, attitude. You can tell you've got a mind that when it gets set and focused on a goal, it's undeterred.
Thank you.
You're an optimist, clearly, and that's really exciting. So it's great hearing from you in that regard.
Thank you.
So I got a couple questions. I think.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think we left off with doing the events. How I think a lot of people dream, maybe in the industry or not, of like, oh, I want to throw a wine event. Maybe it's even a tasting party for their friends.
Sure.
Or maybe they're trying to do the side hustle, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
What are some of the key tips you'd give to people who want to host a wine tasting?
I would say 2 things: be very organized, obviously, be very meticulous, because there's a lot of moving parts. So I'll just give you an example. We just recently had another big event called Riesling Without Borders. That was our second annual one. We had about 200 people come to the grand tasting, and about 125 people come to the dinner. We had 200 different Rieslings from all around the world. And then you have here in New York, we have about 300 different distributors, right? So it's not like we just have 5. You've got to go through all these different distributors to get these wines over to your event. Then you've got to make sure they've been shipped. You've got to keep track, and it's very challenging. But also, one thing that I would say is, instead of worrying about becoming a master sommelier, first you should become a master of Excel. So if you can be really good at spreadsheets, you're already 2 steps ahead of the game. I can promise you. It is very challenging, but I would say in general, if you can hire some kind of assistant, and if you can't afford to hire an assistant, maybe get an intern, someone that might be interested in learning. But there's so many moving parts to do these things. But I would say start small. When I had my first Wine on Wheels, we probably had about 100 wines, different ones, which is still a lot. We had about 25 different sommeliers pouring, and maybe 30 different distributors, to where now, 7 years later, we have about 80 distributors. We had 350 different wines being poured, 90 different sommeliers pouring the wines. But I don't do that by myself. I have 5 people now, and then you have a volunteer team and all this kind of stuff. So doing it on your own can be very challenging for sure, but it's doable, no doubt about it. But you just have to really, time management is so key. It is so key. And again, being diligent, and just realize that you're going to be on your phone a lot, texting, emailing, and you want to respond right away. You do, because the moment you don't respond, if there's an importer who says, hey, Yannick, I'm in, here are the wines that I want to donate, you need to get back to them right away and get those wines and secure them right away. If you wait a few hours, it can be gone right away.
Good advice. I bet people were not expecting to hear time management and Excel skills were the secret sauce to running an event, but
It
it's
really is. Yeah. I think we take things for granted. I mean, I know that being a wine director at a hot place can be very challenging. And so you've got all these different salespeople come ambushing you, or I wouldn't say ambush, that's not a correct term, but emailing you because they're trying to sell. But a simple reply goes a long way. So I would also say, be responding to emails is very much part of your job. Knowing the 9 different Grand Crus and how they taste of every Chambertin, yes, very important, no doubt about it. But the responding to emails and being organized with that administrative stuff is just as important.
that is good advice again. You just keep layering it in there. That's great. So you're a world-class sommelier. You've got an amazing non-for-profit. You're also an athlete. How you mentioned time management earlier, but how do you seriously find the time to do all these things in just 24 hours in a given day?
Well, yeah, for sure, right? So, you figure you need at least 6 hours of sleep, right? So then that leaves you with about 18 hours. And then I need about 2 hours of travel time, right? So then we're down to 16. And then when I'm working at nights at the university club, it's probably about 7 hours right there. And then I'm here at the office, the Wheeling office right now, down on Broad Street. So you figure it out. There's always a way to figure it out, and you have to prioritize. For me, the first thing I have to do is work out. I need to I don't work out for 2 hours, but an hour, a solid workout. Because if I don't work out, then it affects my performance going to work, and then it just has a trickle down effect. So you have to figure out what are your priorities in life and all that kind of stuff. But most importantly, not losing sight of who's important. So sometimes I work so much that I forget, oh yeah, I have my wife, and so having a day where it's just you and her, getting rid of the phone, maybe even leaving it at home. So I recently have Sundays is a day where I just don't look at my phone, no response to emails, nothing, and I just leave it all. And it's just me and my wife. And that has really reinvigorated me as a human being. Just taking the time, going for a simple walk, going to a museum, not thinking about wine, not thinking about anything about the industry or wine on wheels or Wheeling Ford or so on and so forth. That's super important. Having a social life. And it's not easy. It can be challenging, but I've never looked at it that way because I love what I do so much. And sometimes it's problematic because I love it so much and I forget, I have to give a phone call to my 77-year-old dad and just say, hello, how are you? I love you. It's, and so those are things that we shouldn't lose sight on.
That's great. I love the fact that you take a day away. I'm sure it was hard at the beginning, but I bet it's probably something you look forward to now. I'm sure. It's just
100%. Absolutely. I love it. Yeah. I love those lazy days.
I think we all do. And when you work as hard as you do, they're well deserved.
Well, we try our best.
So let's get back to your wine career, and we'll get away from Excel skills and back to some of the book knowledge. So how did you go about, gaining wine expertise? So you clearly got a lot of reps in the hospitality side. You had a great mentor. You did some your first wine class, and then where did it go from there?
For me, when I started working at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, I was the wine director there was a William Schur, master sommelier, and he was probably and still is was really a true mentor. And that's where I started to develop my base for theory, understanding the art of wine tasting, and also the art of service. That service, yes, it's mechanical, but what's most important is the actual the interaction, the experience that you're going to create, because anyone can sell an expensive bottle. Anyway, expensive bottles most times sell themselves, number one. But what a sommelier should be doing is really creating an experience that they will not get anywhere else. And that's what I really learned from William Schur. Of course, like the base of really memorizing, single vineyards in the Mosel, single vineyards in Burgundy, but not just memorization, but understanding the differences. understanding producers and what makes them different. They may have the same vineyard, but they can be drastically different because of the way of their production methods and the way they're trellising their vines. And that was something through him I started to learn and understand more from a practical standpoint, because anyone can go in front of a book, really. I mean, we all have the aptitude to do it, to memorize all this stuff. But if you don't actually understand it, what does it all mean at the end of the day? And so that's where it all really came from. And then in 2004, I took my advanced level of the Court of Master Sommelier, and I passed. And then, of course, I took the Master Sommelier. I passed all parts many times, but I was never able to put it all together. And the last time I took it all I had was left was the theory. But the truth of the matter is, why I didn't pass the theory is because I didn't take the time to really focus and really geek it out, and that's the hard part. It's hard. It's not easy. I mean, I think the way it's set up, it's very fair. I mean, the Master Sommelier examination, I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories. I hear it all the time. But the truth of the matter is that, either you didn't study enough or you just studied way too hard and you weren't studying the right information. And I hear people all the time, I've done it so many times, but I hear people when they leave the room, oh my God, how could I not have passed? I studied for 5 hours, 7 days a week. And when I hear that, I think that's insane. To study 5 hours of wine stuff for 7 days a week and you still did not pass. I mean, there's a problem there. Something is wrong. And that to me is problematic. I think that everything in life is balance. If you study diligently for like a good hour, I think it's just as good as pretending that you're studying for 5 hours, right? So I see people on the treadmill, they're just walking very aloof for like an hour and a half. But the guy next to them might be doing high intensity for 15 minutes, heartbeat, everything. So they're getting more out of it. So, it's all about the intensity that you're in, the focus. I think sometimes people are cheating themselves.
Man, you're giving out all the life's lessons today.
No.
No, I think that's a great point. I think you can get, especially with studying in the books, because you get so alone and
right.
so focused, and it's just you and the material. You forget about that other aspect of it. And how often, like if we're studying for 5 hours, right, as that one person said, is that really 5 hours? Is it 5 hours interrupted by cell phone calls, all the other things? So when you add it up, if they took that down even to just 2 hours of real focus,
absolutely, for sure,
they could probably get that. I think you alluded to this a little bit about studying the wrong things,
right?
Maybe. And I think you brought it up with sort of understanding producers and knowing that. So how do you find the balance between, like you said, geeking out about stuff and then the reality of tasting, trying, and experiencing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the truth of the matter is, I think, one, surrounding yourself with the right people, right? People that have your best interest, people that want to see you succeed. So getting yourself in the right inner circle of a correct community. And that's something that you can be part of, yourself, but you can create on your own, right? So, here in New York City, there's like so many different tasting groups. There's so many different communities, but you just have to find the right one that meets your personality. And it's challenging and it's not easy. I mean, when I was doing the MS exam, I was with 4 main guys for the most part for about a couple of years, and it was amazing. Michelle Kovru from Per Se, Risto Sazovsky, who's now the beverage director, or a corporate director for Alta Marea, John Reagan, who's the wine director for all the Union Square restaurants. And we just had a very good bond, and we all really wanted to see each other succeed. We could kind of rooted for each other. And each of us would come into, we'd meet up like maybe twice a week, and we'd say, oh my God, Muscadet's fair game now. Where did you hear it from? Where did you get the source from? And so on and so forth. And then even certain things about theory. Oh, did you hear about the new Pagos, Vino de Pagos in Spain? Oh my God, there's that. So those are things that, it's not easy, because the world of wine is constantly evolving and it's changing. And it's not just wine, it's sake and it's beer and it's spirits and just food and wine pairings and so on and so forth. So keeping yourself up to date is really important, but making sure that the people that you're around are just as motivated as you are. And it's not an easy art form by no stretch of the imagination. But I think even just 10 years ago, there was no guild song. And I think guild song has been such an incredible base. But I do think that people fool themselves into thinking that, oh, if I memorize all of guild song, again, key operative word is memorize, I'm going to pass everything. And I think what the MS is doing, and I think it's a great thing, a lot of the questions that they're asking and some of the things that they're doing is more about practical, understanding that the stuff that you've memorized. Before, when I took it, they would just ask you a lot of questions that were memorization based. But here they're asking you a lot of practical stuff, and I think that's really great. So if you're going in there thinking that I'm going to memorize all the guild song, I'm going to pass, I think it's the wrong mentality. I really do.
That's great. So let's talk about, you mentioned wine, beer, sake, everything. What are you drinking these days? What are you enjoying? What's like really exciting to you?
So I'm going to be very honest with you. You know, personally, I'm not a big, I mean, I respect them immensely and I appreciate what they're doing, but I don't drink a lot of craft beers. I know I'm going to get in trouble, but I like just kind of unpretentious, shitty beers, and I say shitty beers in a good way. I mean, give me a Heineken, Kronenberg, that's it. This is what I want, a thirst quencher. I don't want to think about anything. And that's what I really very much, I don't like beers that are too hoppy. I can't handle it, but I know why they exist. And I think that's great. I mean, diversity is a wonderful thing, but that's just me. Again, when it comes to spirits, I'm not much of a hard liquor type of guy, but if I do, I think Calvados for me is one of the purest and most unadulterated spirits there is. And I love it. It's something like, particularly in the wintertime, I will have a couple of glasses of it during a month, something to after dinner that I very much enjoy. As far as when it comes to wine, for white wines, I have to say that I'm white Burgundy all the way. But of course, not everybody could afford that. So usually like a very good Petit Chablis, Chenin Blanc is something that I very much enjoy, that I absolutely adore. When it comes to red wines, I think my mom's from Bordeaux, my dad's from Brittany. My dad likes very light, refreshing red wines. He's a big Burgundy guy. And then my mom's from Bordeaux. But I think, Northern Rhone Syrah, like Côte Rôtie, kind of brings those worlds together, I think, personally. And I go crazy for, oh gosh, I love it so much. I think what they're doing in Saint Joseph is unbelievable. But again, Beaujolais, I think the quality is just absolutely stunning that's coming from there. I think Bordeaux too, that we sometimes forget about. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be from the left bank or some Grand Cru Classé. There's a lot of good stuff coming out. Remember, there's over 6,000 chateaus out there, so there's plenty of value and great quality to be had out there. And I think those are kind of what I'm drinking on a regular basis. But I love rosé too. I think rosé just for everyday coffee is something that I like very much so.
Right. Yeah. Tis the season. Although I drink rosé year round. I'm not.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Very food friendly too as well.
Yeah. It's a great communal drink to share with people. And it's just, again, sort of serves whatever you're doing, especially like summer food. Backyard barbecue or whatever you're having.
Yeah, for sure.
Bring that and you'll be all set and there'll be smiles on people's faces.
Always. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what specifically was like the last great bottle or glass of wine you had?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say within the last year, that I had, I'm very fortunate. I work La Pollet, so there's just tons of wines that are constantly being opened. But I would say the one that really has stuck out and has remained with me within the last year was 1966 Vega Sicilia, which was, for me, absolutely stunning. That wine just kind of really stuck out to me, and I just absolutely adore. Of course, whenever I have the chance and I have a couple of dollars lying around and I'm having a good month, I do generally, I'm not going to lie, I do try to buy Domaine Jamais from Côte Rôtie. It's something, Jamais is something that I go crazy for. It's not cheap, but, retail sometimes anywhere from about $100 to $200. But I was at Rouge Tomate, and I believe I took the last bottle from Pascaline, She had the '07 Côte Rôtie Jamais, and it was just, again, I mean, it never fails. It's just so pure and it's so beautiful, and I absolutely go crazy for it. And then Thierry Edmond, I mean, I've had many of their different vintages within the last few months. I was in Paris not too long ago, and Willie's Wine Bar, which is one of my favorite places to go to, has an incredible selection of Northern Rhone Syrahs. And I mean, to all of you who have never had Thierry Edmond or Jamais, I highly suggest. Or I know it's expensive, but get a group of 5 people, go out to a restaurant, $30, do a cooperative thing, and this will give you the opportunity to taste. So there's always an excuse, but then there's not an excuse to make an attempt to try to create something. So, be creative, think outside the box. And I do it too with my friends. We try to get together once a month, 6 of us. And you know what? And $100 each, we get to taste so many great wines. We get a glass of each, and then we get to try older classic producers that we normally don't have a chance to do so. So everyone has that same opportunity.
That is a good idea for anyone, I think, and that could be said for whatever your budget is. And you've alluded to that too. Surrounding yourself with the right people who are enthusiastic about learning about wine and drinking wine. And then whatever your budget is, finding those bottles and experience, like maybe don't jump off and buy, some those $500-$600 bottles off the kick. Just work your way down the wine list.
Sure.
Learn about things, and then every once in a while splurge. And then, because I think when you start tasting like the real fine wines of the world, it sort of opens up your
100%.
eyes, your ears, everything, your senses sort of set on fire, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is what this could be.
Yeah, for sure.
And
absolutely, yeah. I try to tell that to people. I say, yes, that $40 Bordeaux is very, very good, but I hate to say it, that 200. And listen, there are times where the less expensive definitely beats out, and it happens many times. But then sometimes we have to take it easy too. I mean, the prices for some of these, what I would call these 1%ers, are so outrageous. I mean, they're no longer within range. But when you taste them, oh my gosh! I mean, they really do transcend you. Most of them.
Excellent. Do you have a heartbreak grape or a wine that maybe disappoints more often than it excites?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great. I kind of feel like that about Priorat a lot of times. I've had some really great producers, but then sometimes, and not that their wines are bad or anything like that, but they're so modern and they're constructed almost so well that I feel like they lack character, and they're also not. They're quite expensive. They're not giving them away for sure. I think I just expect a little bit more because they've got such a special terroir. They're situated in this special place, and I think some of the producers might be overthinking it, overly oaked, heavy extraction. So sometimes I do feel that about Priorat sometimes. And then I would say that probably the second one, sometimes I think wines from the Douro can be too modern as well. And I talk about still reds because, gosh, I mean, talk about a category that we don't talk enough about is still red wines from Portugal, where they talk about value and age-worthy wines. You can find some really fantastic stuff. But sometimes I think in the Douro, they can be a bit disappointing as well.
Great. Good insight. Thank you for that. Before I go, do you have one person, you named a few, but do you have a most influential person in your life or wine career that's really shaped who you are?
That's a great, great question. I would say through my formative years, it would have to be William Scher for sure. Master sommelier. I think he really kind of really formed me without knowing that he did. But I think I am where I am today because of him, for sure. There's no doubt about it. And then I think as far as other individuals who have influenced me, I definitely think my dad, my 2 uncles who are in the business, definitely had a big impact. And, I was very fortunate to work with other people in the restaurant business that may not have been so wine-centric, but, Cyril Macchioni, who really, to me, was the king of hospitality. I think, really catering to the customer's needs. this idea of, hey, never just say no. And that's important. I teach this to even the people who work with me at the nonprofit, whether it's the university club. There's never a reason to say no. There's just not. And I remember a great lesson. I'm sorry to talk so much, but I was maybe in my third month into Le Cirque, and this gentleman who was sitting at the bar was having his dish, and he asked me for English Coleman's Coleman's mustard. Of course, at the time I didn't know what this mustard was. The only mustard that I ever knew was Dijon. So I go to the pantry and I'm looking. I don't know what this English Coleman's mustard is, And so finally, I went back up to him, and I didn't want to ask any of my coworkers, because I didn't want to. I didn't want to look ashamed that I didn't know what this was. So I went up to him and I said, "I'm sorry, but we don't have it." And he looked at me and he says, "Let me give you a word of advice. You didn't try hard enough, and you shouldn't have said no. And you should have at least pretended that you made an effort to go across the street and look for it for me." And it was something that stuck with me, because you really should show the customer that you're doing everything that you can to try to get whatever they're asking for. And so sometimes we say no too easily. I see a lot of people who do it. Don't say no. Give a good reason, or give some substance behind it. And accommodation is very key. Anticipation is very key. And going into that, I think Bobby Stuckey, who to me is the king of service for sommeliers. And if you want to understand what it takes to be a great sommelier working the floor with someone with passion, charisma, and high aptitude and ethics, is Bobby Stuckey.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For all the insight, all the knowledge you dropped on us today. It was a lot of fun. Really great getting to know you. But before I officially let you leave, what's the best way people watching this can get in touch with you, connect with you, and find out about Wheeling Forward?
Yeah. So, you can go onto our website, which is wheelingforward.org, WHEELINGFORWARD.org, or you can reach out to me through Facebook, Yannick Benjamin, or Instagram or Twitter, and I always respond. On the Wheeling Forward website, you can reach me directly through my website as well. So, if anybody has any further questions, I'm happy to answer any of them. So please reach out to me. And if you ever want to be part of any of our events, please continue on.
Hopefully you're fired up to take the wine world by storm, or just conquer whatever is next in front of you. Really special thank you to Yannick Benjamin. He is just a delight. I got to catch up with Yannick recently. He's been traveling a ton, doing lots of different things in the wine world. And so to hear the latest from Yannick, go to roadtowineexpert.com/Yannick Benjamin, and you could find a little Q&A update and see what Yannick has been hustling on these days. Also, thanks to my podcast manager, Talia Goodman, for pushing me to publish, reminding me of deadlines, and making the podcast a priority. Thanks to Domain for sponsoring this episode of The Road to Wine Expert. Domain is the nation's largest network of wine storage facilities. But they don't just store wine. They can help you in every step of your journey as a wine collector. That means shipping, receiving, importing, organizing, selling, storing, and protecting. Speaking of protecting, Domain offers 2 amazing storage products: Domain cardboard boxes and VineBox, a stackable, flexible wine storage solution. For more information on both those products, you can go to domainstorage.com. They're also available for purchase on Amazon. And thanks to all the amazing music in this podcast. You heard tunes from the following. You heard Funky Souls by Amaria. You can find out more about Amaria at soundcloud.com/Amaria Musique. That's AMARIAMUSIQUE. Link is also available on our website. And you also heard Chill by Sakura Hertz, whose music can be found at soundcloud.com/Sakura Hertz, SAKURAHERTZ. Again, link also available on our website.